can't say that. You can't say bomb in an airport.
That.
Wounding your best friend.
Who needs this? I don't need it. Why would I rent to a church?
Buy large firecrackers.
Got a job working at Discount Auto Parts.
We're gonna have a wrestling
Jamie,
match.
you were one of the wrestlers.
Things were spinning a little bit last year.
Yeah.
So here we are. We are 5 years old, and we're outgrowing our space that we have. So we're going to kind of share with you guys what happened between 2010 and 2015, because those were some crazy days. Like those were
Outgrowing our skill
those
base,
were like,
too.
oh yeah, way outgrowing skill base and way outgrowing our space, but also our own capacities.
Yeah.
But still just willy-nilly in it, winging it as we went. And I think that the one thing that we felt like we were really good at, we were like, man, this whole rehab thing, this whole serving people, this is who we are. We're good at this. Even though, Jamie, you and I we knew enough about construction to get us in serious trouble. But we did have people who were general contractors in our church, like Bob Thorne, Chris Spivey. Like these people start coming in at that time, and we're like, Kevin Scully. And we're like, these guys can help us. And so we started saying, let's make rehabs part of our DNA.
So like every Mother's Day, right?
Yeah. Mother's Day. We wanted to find a single mom or a single grandmother who was literally trying to raise their kids or their grandkids, and we wanted to serve them. We had a criterion. You had to own your own home, and we would come in and do as much as we could do.
In like 3 days.
We always said it was going to be 3 days.
Always say the 3 days.
The weekend
I
before.
think
you were
that
there
literally
the weekend after.
only
Yeah.
after Virginia, though, we had narrowed it down to where in about 2 weeks we could probably get the projects pretty much done. But it was still like a 24/7 deal.
Yes. And you'd have just cycles of volunteers.
Cycles.
You know.
I think Ruby's house, I was looking at pictures of Miss Ruby's house. The last one we did on...
Is that the one where you peeled off the ceiling?
And it was caught on fire. And we had realized it caught on fire because it
And
was
you're
a
like,
drop
put the ceiling back. Yeah.
Yeah.
my
Then Keena's house, where the back of the house started falling off when we started.
We could talk a whole day on all the crazy things of these houses.
But it brought different people with different skill sets. It didn't matter.
People with a heart to serve.
Yeah,
and then
because
they
we were
wanted
like,
to be a part.
you don't have to know how to do
Yeah,
anything.
yeah.
Just come. We'll teach you.
It was good. Good days.
And man, it was fun to be the church that just did it.
And then we were like wanting to still do outreach.
Yeah.
So we thought of, what if we took our church to a park? And
Well,
so
and
that
what-
kind of birthed an
What
idea.
did we do though? We said, what if we didn't have church in our building on Easter?
Yeah.
This was like revolutionary at the
high
time.
holy day
Yeah.
of every church
Bowl
is like
Sunday.
people want them come to our building, come to our building. And we said, what if we didn't?
So
What if we didn't do church
started
there?
a little campaign, a little marketing scheme, and we called it Easter is Near. And it was beautiful, but it was so hot. We were like, people showed up in their Easter best
that's
and
right.
suits, and they were sweating.
Yep.
And we're like, never again. So then we started the next year, Christmas is near.
Christmas is a whole lot better time of year.
Never
But
again on a
do you-
Sunday morning.
Do you know that's
So hot.
It was in that season that
Yeah.
Jim Jackson, who now is a huge part of our missions organization in the Dominican, actually, I remember him building this contraption so that we could drop Easter eggs.
That was a big thing. Everybody was dropping eggs. All
We
the
were
church.
dropping eggs, but they wouldn't let us do a helicopter in downtown Tampa, so we had a crane. We had a crane from Steps Towing.
Which became a whole thing.
And
Yeah.
we dropped like 10,000 Easter eggs. So we had like a 10,000 Easter egg drop. And Jim Jackson wired this whole thing up like
Only he could do
as
it.
only Jimmy could do. Like
Yeah.
Jimmy,
But
love
it was
you.
awesome.
It
Well,
was
and we were
incredible.
praying for 5,000 people.
Yeah.
Like, we gotta do this. And then I set up counters at the gates.
Yeah.
Anybody coming in, and sure enough, I was like, and pull 6,500.
Yeah. And I remember
It was just
calling,
like that too.
I remember thinking that the next week we'd be running 1,000 people.
Yeah.
I did.
I think we had meetings to prepare.
We
Like,
did.
What are we going to do
What are we
with
gonna
all
do?
these kids that are going to come
And guys,
and all of
let
this?
me just tell you this. If there's a church planter watching this, sometimes that doesn't happen. And it doesn't make you a failure.
Yep.
I've had to learn that because,
That's right.
guys, that's hard for me to learn. That was really hard for me to learn because sometimes God has you do something for a season and for a reason, and it's not yours. It's just His. And it was still great. I still loved having those thousands of people come. It was a lot of fun. And we did see people come to our church because of that. The residual effect was there, but it wasn't like the exponential effect that we thought it was going to be.
Well, and when you go to these conferences, sorry, babe,
No,
go
I
ahead.
was just to say, and I'm sure there's still people talking about it, right? Potentially they're not here with us, not like at Relevant, but there's people talking about that event, right? And that there was an impact, right? There usually is some sort of small seed that happens that we just may not ever hear about, but it was an amazing day.
And the funny thing about being in Tampa and in Ybor and with that young demographic that we had, so transient, so moving, and they would be here for a season and then they'd get a job change in another city or get married and move home and start
Have
having
a
a kid.
kid.
Oh
Yeah.
man, we just had so many people going through. It was a lot. And
Yeah.
it was great. And we know a lot of people across
Here we are.
the
Yeah.
Here we
nation.
are. Of the people that started the church, there's 4 left
Yeah, that are here local.
that are here locally.
Yeah.
Like we've had people just move away and
maybe
different
20
things.
that were in the first year. that
Yeah,
are still
Tim
around.
and Lisa,
Yep.
they were here from
Right.
day one.
Yep.
Tom and Don.
Tom and Dawn
Yep.
Wilson, still
Yep.
here
Yeah.
from day one.
Yeah.
So like there are a lot of people who remember those days, but like the 4 of us, like we sitting around doing this, we don't do this that often, but when we do, it's like,
We could
wow.
sit here for days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I
Yeah.
think what's key about that, and to me it's a learning lesson that I got to learn on the outside of ministry, is that if you build your life on numbers, if you build, and there are plenty of churches, plenty of organizations where your value comes from your numbers. And the reality is that what happens when your numbers aren't there anymore, right? And even moreover, what happens when you become intoxicated by your own numbers and your own success? Because then at that point, you verbally say that it's God's credit. But at the end of the day, because you're such a good, faithful servant, it's really about yourself. And so to me, one of the things I learned post-ministry was that you can't build, and even in my real estate life, don't build your ego or your value based on last year's numbers or your numbers this year, because at some point your number's going to come up and it's not.
Yeah.
And
It's not gonna be what you thought it was going to
who
be.
you are to God is irrelevant to what that stuff is you do for Him.
That's solid. Harley, what do you remember in that second phase of 5 years that was like, whoa, I can't believe we did that?
Well, I do. There was one Sunday that we decided we were going to do spontaneous baptisms. Paul decided. The rest
Paul
of the,
decided.
The rest of the staff
Yeah,
said,
no one else did.
No way.
No way.
That-
You're
you know,
insane.
I just realized that was on the heels of
Yes.
it started. Easter is Near started with the series called Unexpected. And we were talking about all the unexpected things that happened in Scripture. And I didn't realize it until like I happened upon some pictures from Easter is Near and saw Unexpected, and I went, we did that. We launched the series on Easter, and it was the end of that series that we did
the spontaneous
crazy spontaneous baptism.
baptisms. And it
Like,
was,
so talk about that, because I think we robbed the idea from somebody,
Stephen
didn't we?
Furtick.
Okay.
Buddy, we stole that from you. Absolutely.
well, Paul ran with it and got the staff on
Carl and I
board,
thought he was
sort of.
nuts. Yeah.
But I vividly remember, like, we ran out of clothes.
Yeah.
Like, Julie and Darren went to the store because we were like, we need more in between services because we need more
I'm
clothing.
pretty sure our staff said, Paul, we'll get enough clothes for like 25 people. I think that'll be it. Do you guys, I know the number.
I don't remember.
Do you remember
I
the
don't
number?
know the
I don't
number.
remember.
I just know that we had to buy more stuff.
I was
because
wrong,
it
so I don't want to
was-
remember the number.
53 people.
Isn't that
Wow.
insane?
That's crazy.
That's
And-
crazy.
Do you remember the first person that got baptized on that day?
I just blocked it all out.
Okay, so here's what was crazy. I was preaching on the Ethiopian eunuch because I was preaching in the book of Acts, and I talked about the fact that the Ethiopian eunuch wasn't planning on getting baptized, just like a lot of you aren't. And then Philip shows up, and he's reading the book of Isaiah, which is so random and so crazy. And he asked Philip, he goes, "Hey, how could I if nobody tells me?" And literally a guy, I'm in the middle of preaching in the first service, and a guy is sitting on the front row, and steps into the baptismal pool.
Oh, that's right.
Because I jump in first, and people were like
In the
shocked because
building.
I'm in full clothes. The pool, yeah, back in the day, like if you go to our church, we don't have a baptismal, like maybe the kind of church you grew up in. So we would buy a pool from Walmart until it started leaking so bad.
Just
and then we
cycle
throw,
them
then we
every
throw it
couple
away
years.
and we buy a new one.
Yeah.
But like this day, I said, guys, I'm gonna jump in the middle of my sermon into the pool so that people go, I wasn't planning on it either, and neither are you. And as soon as I jumped in, I was still preaching, and a guy comes walking over to the ladder and climbs
up
in.
in fully
And I
clothed.
was like,
Yeah.
he's fully clothed. He doesn't even go change clothes. He's fully clothed. And I said, what are you doing? And God said, this is how it starts.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm the guy you're talking about. I need to get baptized right now. And I'll never forget his face. I mean, I looked at his picture yesterday and I was just like, it was one of those things that, and Jamie, you're probably the only one that can attest to this, but I don't pull the God card out.
He does not. That's true.
I don't ever pull out, well, God told me this. I got a word from the
He
Lord.
was selling this so hard. I was like, oh, Lordy.
I told the guys, I said, guys, you know I don't do this.
Yeah.
I just feel like God said we got to do this.
And we were fighting as much as we could fight this. We thought, oh, nobody's going to do it. It was going to be embarrassing. And
Yeah.
then sure enough, and we didn't support him. And then the Lord showed up.
But he showed up on me because I didn't believe that. I only believed him for like 25, which I said, okay, let's get 25.
At least
And
25
then one of
shots.
our staff members at the time, Darren and Julia, ran to Walmart in between services
Yeah.
to actually go buy more
Get
stuff.
Because
That
we ran out.
That was a
So now
sweet day.
so that took place in our current building. To get us there, we were still in the Italian club. And there, if anybody was around or remember those days, the room was so echoey, we just made the music louder. It was the most painful experience ever. And so we were running 3 services, and you had the volunteers for each one, and then it was bleed over from, one service to the other, and you said, okay, we got to do something. So we started trying to hunt other places at Ybor. And we were really close to getting a lease with the mob. And I would actually lose sleep at night because I thought we wouldn't make our bills. And the Sopranos were big back then. And I lost sleep because I thought surely we were
They're
going
gonna
to
come
get
after me.
He
You
watched
know,
every episode. so,
kiboshed, right?
yeah.
So we finally, we don't do a deal with the mob. We do a deal with the Greek mob. And so this particular landlord that we approached owned a couple of things around town. And every conversation started the same way. I don't need this money. I don't need it. Why would I rent to a church? But yet somehow
Well,
we would
what
talk.
did he say about churches? Churches are what?
A terrible idea.
And he said, church is bad business.
Bad.
Oh yeah, bad business.
That's bad business.
But yet somehow he kept meeting with me to figure this out.
And
Gold glasses.
when I signed the deal, the lease,
the
he
same
said the
thing.
same thing to me. He said, I don't know why I'm signing this. Churches are not good business. And I was like, well, we've been a pretty good business. He goes, not to me. And I was like, I said, I hope that we can prove you wrong. Getting into that space was,
Oh my
Jamie,
gosh.
I mean,
So-
think about
That was the
talk
biggest
about that part.
rehab.
The
What-
best.
What was the space before
Yeah.
we
Oh,
moved
yeah,
into
sorry.
the building?
It was a teen club,
It was a
which was
club.
really something else. I don't.
That had a
There
purple
was-
dance
Yes,
spot.
The longest continuous bar in Ybor City
the
at
length
the
of it.
time.
Yes. Yep.
That was continuous. It was 118 feet long.
So where the kids ministry is now, that's essentially where all the bar space was.
So
and then it was
pretty
a
much
video
we kept
game
in
place.
line with what we were doing at the Italian club. Put the kids right back in the bar again.
Yep.
It was like we had taken, maybe the Lord just prepared us through all the little house
Yeah, because we
Rehab.
did most of the work on that freaking thing.
most?
Yeah,
I'd say
except for- except-
At the beginning,
99.9%.
at the beginning, probably
Oh, the demo for sure. But we
did
demo things well.
all the demo, and then we had to hire an electrician, Ernesto.
Ernesto. Yep. Still around.
Ernesto, the electrician.
Fire sprinklers.
And we had to redo the fire sprinklers, and then we had to move the bathrooms. That was the biggest thing. Because
Yes.
remember, the bathrooms used to be in the loading.
The loading dock.
There was an actual loading dock for a locomotive.
Actually, a warehouse supply, that and the Alfonso Tech across that's now a building, those were both owned by the same people. That was one of the original block buildings in Ybor. Yes. 4-course block.
So there was a
Yeah.
lot of work and a lot of hours and a lot of blood,
And-
sweat, and
And
tears.
and
And then the money ran out. We were just done.
So here's the best part. This is
Yeah,
the best part.
the fundraising.
Paul says this. He goes, oh, we can get the chairs in a minute. But Paul's like, I don't know how we're going to do
the
this.
chairs, Carl in the chairs.
Yeah.
Carl's not here to defend himself. That's even
This is
better.
the best part. Well, hold on for the tea. But Paul's like, I don't know how we're gonna do this. I said, Paul, we got no option. We just got to go forward. We got to figure it out. And then it was like, you don't have time to be anxious. It just is. And then sure enough, we keep pressing forward and it gets worse.
Well, like we knew that it was going to cost us. We said it was going to cost us $100,000 or $150,000.
It was a round number.
And I'll never forget Hal Mayer. God bless him. I love Hal. But he said, Paul, you do know it's gonna cost you
local
more.
pastor.
It's gonna cost you more, and it's gonna take you longer than you ever thought
And
it
that
would.
was the story of our lives.
And I was
everything.
like,
So while we're
not
learning.
me. I was like, not me, because we planned this. I know what it's gonna take. And they're like, okay.
Yep.
And
Sure enough,
it took
after
us,
the first contractor took advantage of us in the name of the Lord.
yeah. And then it cost us $250,000.
But we were
And-
about to get the CO.
Oh, Jamie, remember that? And the
You
fire
talking about the
marshal.
upstairs
Walked
with the
through
fire marshal.
upstairs and
Yeah.
mixed it.
It says-
You have to cut this out for egress. That's
yeah,
what I
basically
remember.
there's beams that are
Talk
up in the
about
upstairs
heart attack,
and you have
no
to be
money,
6 foot.
zero money, but God, and this
But
was
God.
the story of Relevant, but God would come through every time. How did he come through that time?
We still didn't have the money
Money.
because that was going to cost us $10,000 to cut those out. And
And
we
we
didn't
were at
have the money.
zero.
And you may not even remember this.
I'm
And I
trying to
had
remember what
somebody
happened.
who
Oh yeah.
I had somebody who called me and said, "Hey, my father-in-law
Yes. Yep. I remember now.
has a gift for the church."
And it was,
And he had already written it.
Yep.
And he said, he'll drop it off tomorrow. I was like, okay. And I remember that was a Friday. And Monday I got to the office and I opened the mail and there was a check for $10,000 in there written a week before we heard from the fire marshal.
Yep.
And it was like all those crazy things. Jamie, you forgot the angel from the first 5 years when we ran out of money doing Virginia's house. And there was an angel that showed up.
That's right, at baptism, right?
At
the beach
baptism.
baptism.
Had to be an
That's
angel
right,
unaware.
You were like, hey, we've ran out of all of our money, and he gave us the exact
He
amount
gave
of
us,
money we
we,
needed.
Same
and
thing.
we spent $15,000 doing Virginia's house,
Yep.
and we had no money left.
No.
None, zero.
Paul's like, I don't know
couldn't
how
buy a
we're gonna
soda, not a soda,
buy the staff.
not a bottle of
Pay
water,
their salaries.
nothing.
You were not even on
You weren't
staff
on
yet.
staff
And,
at
yeah,
that
you ain't
point.
no stuff. You was a
Yeah.
volunteer. She was best
Oh
volunteer
my
ever.
word! But that's the story of Relevant.
like,
how God
a
just
guy showed up the next week and
pursued.
he said, well, what do you need? And I said, I know we're backing up, but it's like these little nuggets.
That's what we would do. We would step out in faith and God provide.
Don't you remember me saying, the guy came up and said, what do you need? And I said, a building. He said, no. He said, well, I don't have one of those. And he said, well, what else do you need? I was like, well, we just emptied our savings account. We only had $15,000 in there, but we emptied it. He goes, I'll have you a check for it tomorrow. And you and I drove away
Sure.
and said, nice try.
Yeah.
And he showed up the next day.
Yep.
And I don't think he ever showed up again.
I don't know what it is.
I don't think he
No
did.
idea.
I still don't remember his name. I know that he showed up one Sunday. And God, I don't know if you believe in angels or not. I just know that God shows up when God needs to show up for his
Yeah.
church.
And
'Cause-
he still does that today.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
So the Carl and the chairs, these people waited for that story.
that's true. You got to, all right, go ahead and throw
I'll
it out
start.
there.
All right, so somebody designated the money. That's a good way to say it, right? And it was 10 grand, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
Something like round numbers.
Seven or 10 grand.
Yeah,
I don't
but
know,
it was
something.
such a good deal for chairs coming out of Atlanta.
They're going to be cushion chairs.
They were
Cushion,
cushioning,
very
they
nice
were
cushions, yeah.
comfortable.
And so Carl finds these people, and then we send a check. So this donor gives the money. Oh, it's so great. And then the chairs just don't come. We're getting,
Well, we're waiting because we're going to move in.
Yeah.
And we're going to move into our new building and we have not one chair.
and
no
they're
chairs.
not answering
building.
no messages, no voicemails, nothing. They stopped responding to Carl's calls.
The only mistake that Carl ever made was he sent the money before we got the chairs.
Yes, he wired it.
Oh,
Remember, we didn't
We
use
were in
our
a
credit cards. The
hurry.
first time we never
Yeah.
used our credit
That's
cards.
right.
So lesson learned.
He wired it.
He
and-
didn't do anything else ever that was
but
wrong.
we still
ever.
hold it over his
Oh,
head.
absolutely.
Every
Golden
time
child.
we see him.
Yes.
If you see him on Sunday, you
God
should say
provided.
something.
So here's the
the
best part.
city, what? The,
No, it
Whoa,
wasn't the
hold
city.
on, wait,
It
you're
was the
giving God.
voters?
No,
it's the
it wasn't
Baptist.
the
Hold on,
city
wait.
at all. Go.
So I go back to the donor and I had to apologize. I'm sorry, we wasted your money. And this poor guy goes, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you, my money's cursed.
That's right. right.
Oh yes, I totally forgot that.
That's
So then
right.
I said,
It is
I don't know what to
I
do,
know.
but I know that our kids camp was at the Tampa Bay Baptist Conference Center,
Yeah.
and I had a relationship with Tom Biles.
Good dude.
Great
Yeah.
dude.
You
I said,
call up,
Tom, we don't have any chairs.
We're about
Can
to
we?
move in.
We're about to move in. Can we
need
borrow the
something."
chairs?
Yeah.
And he goes, I think we have 150 of them, or yeah, I think 150
He said we
or
could
200.
borrow 'em,
He said we can
right?
borrow
For-
them. He said you can borrow them. He said, but I need them back in 6 weeks.
Oh, that's it. That's it.
6 weeks. And I was like, I think we'll be fine by then. And like we were like, we had
We
no
don't have any
idea.
money.
And literally 6 weeks later, he called back and said, you can just keep them.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
those were we had
We had
brown-
those for years.
It was
did it say?
supervisor of elections.
Yes, it was.
They had got them from somebody.
Yes,
and so at the
supervisor of
back of relevance chairs in the early days, they were brown chairs. If you remember those
And
days.
we were trying to be so like cool and
we had
relevant.
Supervisor of elections.
I think
had
then we
the
painted everything
jankiest-
kind of tan and brown because that's the color of
janky
chairs. we
chairs.
had.
Man,
And
those were the
supervi-
days.
It was the first 5 years in this building. And Susie, you and Carly and a bunch of other people, we didn't have any money we had the money to build the kids' rooms,
Oh,
but we
to
didn't have any money to
decorate.
decorate the kids' rooms. And so we
I
all
found
decorated ourselves.
A foam cutting knife.
Yeah, with the big
And-
gears that said real kids.
And I started being creative with foam and making signs. And yeah,
that was
that was
how it was.
interesting.
And that
for at
last
least like 6 months to a year, I think we had those.
no,
out.
Susie, we had those for
Longer
5
than
years.
that.
Yeah,
I think it
Until
was
we
longer
bought the
than
building.
that.
We
Until
need
we
some
bought the
pictures
Did you,
of
building.
that.
did you do a thing? What's there
Oh,
now?
people painted too on
Yeah,
the
I was
walls.
gonna say, there
we
was
had some
paint-
artists in the
Yeah.
church, and they
We
painted
did all
really
of that.
neat
We did
murals.
not do the renovation of our kids' ministry till we bought
Yeah,
bought
but
the
that's
building.
what it looks like now, right?
Yes, the way
Was
it
that
looks
one?
The way
now.
it
Yeah,
looks
yeah, yeah.
now, but the initial.
The first
was-
5
That was
years, it
crazy.
looked very.
We had
very
our
least.
hands
It was.
all over that
It was
place.
fine.
Hold on, wait. Before we let these people go, tell them about the roof and Haas's old office.
So So we were in a lease for the building for 5 years. The lease was a true triple net lease. That means that everything that you have, everything that goes on in the building, you have to pay for. So that means if there's a roof leak, you pay for it. If there's an air conditioning problem, you pay for it.
Right.
Everything. We were all in. But a new roof for that building was $90,000
That
for
was a
building
deal,
and
remember?
that was going to be a deal.
George.
And we were like, I'm not putting another $100,000 in. We already put $250,000 in that we
And
knew
we
we'd
don't
never
own
get
it.
back.
Right.
We
We, were
didn't own
not
it.
owners. We were leasing.
So we said, we'll just keep patching it. And we had a guy in the church. This is how God worked. We had a roofer in the church who
Yes.
kept patching the
and
roof.
Patching, and
But at
patching.
some point in time, it got so bad that literally, this was back when Dexter first came out, or maybe we called it Dexter after that. I don't remember. But Jamie is a creative engineer. That's a creative engineer. Because your title that Jamie wanted to be called was the pastor of innovation.
That would have been it.
Back in the day,
Yep.
he was going to be the pastor of innovation.
So it's
All right.
raining
So
into
what
the
happened?
building,
it's raining into the building. and
right
we-
in front of the power boxes.
Right. We had the power supplies that are upstairs. Like that room was the room where the roof was the worst.
You could see sky.
And so Jamie devised a innovative way to
Taken from
take
Dexter.
plastic,
Uh-huh.
visqueen, and it would run in and it would funnel into a
Dumpster, garbage can.
No, it wasn't a garbage can. You changed that. It was a garbage can, but you said, no, that won't work because we can't get it out of the building unless we carry the garbage can. So you said, it's going to funnel into a cooler that I can hook a water hose up
Oh,
to
yeah.
And then run the
and then
hose
run the
all
hose
the
That's
all the
right,
way
out the back
outside.
door, yeah.
And it
Yeah.
ran out the back door. And that it was like that at least a year, Jamie, don't you think?
Oh, at least.
Or maybe two.
Maybe even 2, because that roof was so expensive.
It
and
was
you couldn't
too
keep
expensive.
patching it.
We couldn't afford to.
Yeah.
And
and
now
so-
it's even insulated. You have insulation up there.
So that was the first 5 years of leasing Relevant Church, the building that we're currently in right now.
And God grew.
And we grew
And
again
we had
exponentially.
groups, and we had life groups started during that time, and we had people that were meeting in homes and life change and children being born, and it was becoming less singles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And young
We
singles and
started
more
growing up.
Families.
Yeah.
They started
Yeah.
getting
Like
married and having
we
kids.
started making
So we really started
like family
then thinking,
ministry mattered then.
We're gonna have
Yeah.
to, because we kept growing, and we're like, we're gonna have to do something about our kids ministry. We can't keep using all this.
Yeah. I believe it was
Old
during
stuff.
that 10 years that we hired
Aaron
Yep.
during that second phase, during that early 10 years. It was late. It was probably about year 8 or 9 is when we hired Aaron.
And a part-time youth guy.
Oh yeah, and Justin Wilson, I think, was in that
Mhm.
era, maybe.
Didn't we have
No,
Darren?
he's the
No,
little-
No,
as kids
Darren
first?
worked with youth too.
Yeah, he was kids and youth.
First.
Kids and youth, and
about a
then
year.
so Darren came first, and then Aaron
Yeah.
came after
Right.
Darren.
Yes, yes.
That's how it worked.
So that's 10 years, and we are rolling. Like, I honestly felt like at that time there was no stopping us. Like we were the cat's meow around town. And so man, I remember having our 10-year anniversary, and we were just like, man, God is doing so much cool stuff here, man. This is the
Carl was
greatest
killing it with the
greatest
band.
day
Yeah.
ever. Like we were like everything was good.
And so then we get to year 11. 11 through 15 was something. And we'll get to that next.
About this that
Ah.
Ethiopian eunuch went back to Africa and started a church that's still in existence today. The first
that crazy?
person that
They still have
stepped
a
out in
semblance of
baptism
that.
was an African American guy.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know that that's significant, but to
wasn't.
me,
It was to
it
you,
meant
'cause it made
something
you
because
guys-
I was like, you know, God
know.
called an African American man that Philip spoke to, and
Yeah.
he changed the world.
Yeah.
Like the known world in Africa at that
Yeah.
time, and
Should
that church
I
still
move
exists today.
Augie? He's whining. Can you hear Augie whining? Not really. All right.
He's not as bad.
We got to keep trucking because who knows when Ashland's going to be done in there.
I know.
What's the next things that we're going to talk about so we
Th-
can
th-
divvy
th-
them up?
this is so
Is
we're
this
pivoting.
working?
So we're pivoting now
Oh,
to
gosh.
What's 11?
11 through 15.
Which is
So which is Carl leaves, like it's transition season.
really?
No transition.
Yeah.
No, you go first.
You're
I
first.
first,
You're
yeah.
first. You're like year 11.
Well, no,
I
we
think-
were
or-
we were gone in 2012.
Yeah.
The
Right,
Summer
so
of
that's-
2012.
and
so that
Carl was
during
gone.
That 50
Carl was
years,
gone right after that.
10.
He was, there
Was
for
he?
like 2 years.
No, he was there longer
No.
than that.
Yeah, he was.
Figure we started
The
it.
Vonda Bushies moved in 2017.
Okay, so then he was there.
Wait,
No, because we
No.
moved here. We were here when Carl left because I remember sitting here with David Sean talking about it. So we were in this house. So that is right. You were probably
Yeah.
he was closer to 15.
So you guys
We're
left in
12.
2012.
we were.
So
in
that
the
was
mid-
that
probably
segment.
13,
We were in the
14.
midst of the 5 to 10 year.
Yes. So because you helped
Launch.
It was what's her face was the last house.
Marlene.
Justin's mom.
Marlene was
Marlene.
the last because that was announced that Easter is near, and that was the last. And
That
then
was
we
the last
were-
one. Yeah, you have to edit out because Easter is near, transition into the Christmas is near after Marlene's house.
so 5 to 10, and then you guys. So then you guys were in the. So we should have talked about you guys, but we'll just talk about it in this section anyway.
Nobody's going to remember. We don't even remember.
It's
I
true.
couldn't remember. I was trying to figure out when it was.
It's all a blur.
All right, so now we're kind of in that season, and I think maybe that's how you guys can launch in and go, hey guys, we weren't in the first half of this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you were gone. Were you gone 2000? So
We left in July of 2012.
July of 2012.
July
It's
2nd.
in the memory.
Yeah, file it's locked away.
July 2012.
The counselor brings
July
it out
of
once
It
in
was
a
your
while.
birthday month.
We were
About-
the announcement was made while we were in North Carolina,
right.
Yeah.
and it was July of 2012,
hmm
and then I think Carl and Kristen left in 2017. I want
I think you're right. I think you're right because 2015 is when we bought the building.
Yep.
So
That
and he left right after that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay. So and we're gonna talk about kind of. You guys can talk about kind
I
of.
wish there was a way to like have your own off scripted afterwards. Like there's like this era of, you had your diehards that were the starter, the with it down no matter what, and then
Yeah.
you got into corporate employment. right? Where
Well, yeah,
you know, and I don't mean that
Why
derogatorily.
don't you say
it's
it
just-
like that? Why don't you handle it? And we'll
I think
pick up.
that's okay.
You
I
know?
think that it was like
I
it was
guess
like
we'll just
because you were
editorialize
like,
if we have to. If we
there,
offend
there
anybody,
are like there are seasons like pioneers.
yeah, there you go.
Mhm.
They're
That's
the
what they use.
pioneers, and then there are the kind of the people who come in after the pioneers. They're like, "What's already built?"
Yeah. This is a career.
They didn't realize what it took.
Yeah.
Pioneers, like,
To get it.
and
to
maybe
that
you guys can
state.
talk about the fact it literally for a season cost us our relationship.
It was everything. Yeah.
I mean, because we like Relevant Church for us was the second tier. Like we were already doing
Yeah,
life together.
exactly.
We
Right.
were serving in
Yeah.
ministry together. Like so, like we were doing life
Are
together.
you capturing this?
Um,
Sorry, I just wrote
I just think like there's something that you guys can say to that.
I'll take care of it. Been
I
practicing
can't.
for
All
I
right, you
can't
go
talk
into
for a few
it.
years.
You go into
All right,
it.
so you so
Be gentle.
I'm gonna be great. It's gonna be
You'll
beautiful.
edit
It'll
out
be fine.
anything.
It'll be
We
edited
get
anyway.
final cuts.
whatever. I'm not
It'll be
afraid.
fine. Yeah.
not
We've
afraid.
already
I'm not
walked. We've already
afraid.
walked through this
Yeah.
plenty.
Yeah. That's first.
It's all right.
So
People
Um,
like the raw relevance.
you can't say that. You can't say bomb in an
Say
airport.
that.
Wounding your best friend.
I don't need it. Why would I rent to a church?
Buy large firecrackers. Got a job working at Discount Auto Parts.
We're gonna have a wrestling
Jamie,
match.
you were one of the wrestlers.
Things were spinning a little bit last year.
Yeah. So here we are. We're sitting in 2015, and kind of on the heels of like we have to buy this building because our lease is up, and so we're going to cover 2015 to 2020, and Jamie, you and Carly weren't part of that season.
No. See, this is the tea that y'all have been waiting for. I know. Any of you guys been around for more than 10 years? You remember my last tenure here, our family, and then we were away for a bit. We lovingly call it our breakup period. It's funny. Woo. For me, it was the greatest probably challenge of my faith, and what that looked like. I'll give away the punchline of the story is that Paul and I have done so much reconciliation, and it really is a thing of beauty at this point. But going into, the building was already leased, and we were already at it. And Paul and I haven't actually talked in depth about, a ton of these things, but, we're best friends, and we don't see things, I didn't see things as leader employee. I saw it as, equivalence. And so we would go through staff meetings and you could feel it in a room. You could cut it with that tension with a knife. And, we were best friends that then turned into employee employer. And we, including myself, could not figure out how to get around that.
Because this is something that the four of us, we dreamed about this. Like it wasn't my dream.
Yeah. Oh,
It was our dream. And
We had already been doing life.
There was no
together for
backup
so many
plan either.
years.
no, it was all that we knew. And I do think it got tense because we were growing so fast that the church was outgrowing my leadership ability. I think it was outgrowing everybody's
Yeah.
leadership ability.
because we were the starters, and the
Yeah.
skill set that you
But
have
I
as a
do
starter.
remember one
pioneer.
time at one of these conferences we were all at, and you told me, you said, Susie, I feel like God is telling me that Jamie's not going to be on our team.
Gosh, I don't even remember when that was.
And I do. And I was like, we just finished this building. There's no way. Not happening. And so you probably listened to me instead of God at that time. And then things kind of got a little tumultuous with the relationship, and it was harder and harder and harder until finally you're like, I can't do this anymore.
Well,
You let me refi first. That was great.
do you?
Remember that? Remember that? I walked in. I said, "Listen, I know things aren't great, but if you let me get my refi done, that would be awesome." Remember
Oh
that?
my word.
I do remember the walk.
But it was
The walk.
It was
Oh God, that was
awful.
terrible.
I
It was
remember
awful.
it was
It's like
terrible.
It's like the mob. I knew I was going to get a bullet in the back of the head. That's what that walk was.
But I remember us sitting in our house. I remember Carly coming over. It sucked. It was the worst dinner ever.
I think you were like, I have chocolate cake.
I mean, I knew Charlie liked chocolate at least.
Yes.
The
It
ba-
was, it was
It was
one of those
terrible
times
though.
where
Like it was like
God, what are you doing? We're all
This is
flawed
stupid.
individuals. We should be able to work through this and
But we couldn't. We couldn't
It-
get around ourselves.
couldn't.
Mm-mm.
Like
Couldn't.
I don't think I wasn't mature enough at the time.
Yeah. And I was
to-
so into my own thing. We couldn't get past that impasse.
It's like the Paul and Barnabas.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. It was
like
if
God
you want to
took us-
spiritualize
Yeah.
it,
Well, Paul wrote the rest of the Bible, and I went and sold real estate. So. Too much.
but yeah,
Too
you know
much
what,
too
Jamie?
All
soon.
of this
You know what,
church
though?
stuff
Jamie,
kept happening.
The fact is, there was another church that you and Carly
poured
got
into as a
poured
church
into
plant.
again
And God poured into
and
you.
needed, and
Yeah.
you guys needed that.
And God brought
and it
different
was
people
like-
to relevant. But
It's that weird thread that God weaves that you don't understand when it's starting. Like, what is this looking like, and what does this mean, and like, what is this end result? Which is, you're always on a journey. But during that time away, there was a space where we were able to go and in some ways heal and walk through and be poured into and pour into. And it was a church plant. We're like, we're not doing this again.
Yeah. Failed our kids twice.
But it was a good space for all of us, right? And it was just, and it's still like, people, would you do it differently? And no, right? Like it hurt, it was tough, but the beauty that comes out of all of that is just, it's him.
And I think what's important, the biggest lesson I've learned in my spiritual life clues in an episode ago, which is really when your identity becomes wrapped up in what you do for him instead of who he is and who you are to him. That is where the thing goes wrong. And I was so wrapped up in who I was as a provider of spiritual goods and services that I lost track of why it is that I was even doing what I was doing. It wasn't like I was like a hypocrite or that sort of thing. It's funny when I explain to people, hey, by the way, that's Paul, my best friend, and sort of like didn't work out. Like it would be easier to explain to somebody if I cheated on
Yeah.
you with the
Or yeah, if
secretary.
you like
Right. There was
you had
like
done
a-
something with the finances,
Stole
something like-
money, right?
But it
Something-
wasn't that.
It wasn't
and
that.
that's I think, like for me, like I mean, I hope somebody watches this because when church you end up wounding your best friend. It sucks.
it was an awful. That
Because
was such
for
a
us,
low.
like we
Yeah.
lost too.
Yeah, it was
Like
such
we
a
were
low.
like we lost the people that we would call at a moment's notice. And, what are you guys doing? I don't know. What are you guys doing? I mean, we
wanna
ate
walk down
dinner
the
together.
street?
We ate dinner together because
we
they
lived in the same neighborhood.
in the same neighborhood for
a
3 or
couple
4
of
years. I don't know.
But
Yeah.
God took us down these two different paths.
And literally,
Right,
and we
yeah.
didn't.
And we'll get back to the
We didn't
reconciliation.
speak. We didn't speak a whole lot
No.
during that
No.
season. Like I think you and I spoke some.
Yeah.
But like,
It was like you guys were doing your thing and raising
and we
your
wanted.
kids
We were going to
and-
let you do that.
Yeah, and God was taking relevant. So
God was doing all kinds of
so
stuff.
that was 2012, and we're at 2015.
And so then, like, remember, Jamie handled all of our real estate stuff because he was still doing real estate on the side. So now we're out of our lease in 2015, and I've got Carl, who's great with money, and he goes, Paul, here's what the landlord said: we either buy the building
Or get out.
or get out.
And you got to be out. This is like January, February.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
because
You
he
didn't
wouldn't
have
he wouldn't
March.
respond
it
to
was
us.
like March, and we had to be out in August.
August. Our
So
lease was up in
then, yeah.
August, and
It was
and Carl said, and so we started looking for other spaces, could not find a space. We actually took a vote at Relevant Church, probably the only vote we've
Really?
ever taken. Yes, we did.
Because in the Constitution and bylaws, it was like you had to
To vote on
That's
if you're
right.
going to buy land, you had to vote
Yeah.
on it. So I wanted to do a preemptive thing, and I asked people, I was like, would you rather us stay here or go somewhere else. And Jamie,
Please go
where did
somewhere else. Please
where
go somewhere
I
else.
didn't want to
Please
stay
go
there.
somewhere
Yeah.
Like you knew that I didn't
Yeah.
want to be there to begin with.
By that
I'd-
point, you said to yourself, "Gosh, suburbs would be great."
yes.
Oh.
Oh no, I was looking. I was only looking in the suburbs.
Yeah.
I was only looking in the suburbs. And
again, God
unanimously,
said,
and I don't know if it was unanimous,
No.
but like overwhelmingly, people said, we
Stay
have to stay in
here.
Ybor. And I was
Stay
like,
here.
purr, purr, purr. And
You should have
then,
made them like they had to stay if they voted yes.
yeah. And then it was, the guy said, okay, I'm going to sell you the building. And we ran the comps on it. The comps pulled $900,000 for our building.
And he wanted 1.2.
He wanted, no. I offered him 1.1 and thought I was giving him a deal. He goes, you're not even close. I was like, bro, it's 200,000 more than it's comping for. He goes, well, I don't care. Don't buy it then. And so I said, well, tell me what you want for it. And he said, I want 1.725 million for it. And I was like, you're out of your mind. And I remember telling
Start
Carl,
packing.
I was
Start
like,
packing,
I
kids.
said, Carl,
We're done.
we can't raise that kind of money.
Yeah.
Because he said, and you have to close by August. Now it's May.
Yeah.
It's May to August.
When all that
And
negotiation
he said,
ended up, yeah.
now you have to raise. And we knew we could not
And
get
we
a
were
loan.
running what, like
We
500,
were-
600 people at that time? At least, because we were
Yeah.
like, there's no way we can move 500 people
Yeah.
anywhere. You can't just find a vacant hotel conference room.
Yeah,
You
we
know,
couldn't do
You
it.
can't do
No.
it in a
And
ballroom.
so I said, guys, Carl said, well, Paul, if you don't believe in this, we can't raise the money. And I was like, but I don't believe in it. I don't think we can do it. And he's like, and I was like, Carl, you're telling me that we've got to raise, basically we ended up having to raise $750,000.
in like 3
in
months.
3 months.
Over the summer.
And
the
I
worst
literally was
time that
heading
people
out to,
give.
I was heading out to Saddleback to talk to David Sean,
Yeah.
a very dear friend at Saddleback Church. And I said, David, I think we're gonna buy our building. He goes, great. So you're gonna do a capital campaign? I was like, yeah. He goes, so how long do you have to do it? I said, 3 months. He said, God bless you. That's what David said. He said, let me know how that works out. I was like, that's exactly what I think. And I said,
So if we ever question why we're in Ybor,
yeah, it's that. And so I remember going to the church in May of 2015, and I said, guys, we have to raise money. This is how much we have to raise.
we did a dinner.
We did
We
it.
came up with like an ungodly amount that night and pledges. It was like
There was $125,000 pledged on that night.
that night. Yeah.
And I said over the
Okay,
next
maybe we can do
over
this,
the next
God.
3 months, we have to raise $700,000. We have to.
Yeah.
And
And
I
God
know
did
that
it.
the owner said he didn't believe that we could do it.
Right. So
We-
he wasn't preparing.
He was not
Either.
preparing.
He
And
was
so
just
we
as
had our
shocked as
money,
we were.
and we were ready to close, and he
He
wasn't
wasn't
ready to
ready.
close because he didn't have his ducks in a
Yeah.
row. And God did it. And what's crazy is, Jamie, I don't know if you remember this. We had not spoken in a couple of years at that time, at 2015.
It had been a minute.
And I
And I remember that phone
called
call.
and I told Carl, I said, Carl, Jamie needs to be here for this signing because Jamie
Yep.
was a part of this. And I said, and I called Jamie and I said, will you come? Will you just come because you've been a big part of this. And
And you did.
you
Yeah.
did.
That was hard.
Yeah.
And I know it was tough. I mean, I know he was celebrating, but it was still tough. It
Yeah.
was like, and literally we watched God raise
That
$750,000 in 3
Miraculously,
months.
yeah.
I don't know how that happened.
That's a lot.
I still don't know how it happened. So don't call me and ask me because I don't know. You might need to call Tim because Tim might have something written down somewhere. But I don't know how it happened. I
Yeah.
know people had garage sales. I knew people sold stock. I know, like, it was
There was money coming in
crazy.
everywhere.
It didn't make any
Yeah.
sense. And we bought the building, and then right after that, we had to put a roof on the building.
That's
Yeah.
right. 'cause
Literally.
You owned at that point.
We owned it then, and we were like, we have to
can't
do this.
keep
And we
nurturing
had to
this alone.
raise another $100,000 between August and December, and put the roof on.
Even
in
another
December.
100. Wow.
Another $100,000 was raised between August and December of 2015 to put a new building on the building.
But did we raise money for no, the kids ministry came later.
That came the next year.
Yeah.
So it was like
Crazy.
2015. We had raised, literally, it ended up being about $850,000 in 1 year to buy this building.
and we just
then
kept moving
literally stuff
forward.
started just like
Yeah.
exponentially. Things were just taken off then
we said, okay, we've got to redo our children's ministry. So we called a little company called Wacky World.
Yeah.
Remember Wacky World?
Yeah.
I'll talk a little bit about our
Wacky
kids
World,
ministry.
yeah, they were just the innovators of the time. They had done stuff at Disney, had their hand in that, and they came in and they.
He was an
everything
Imagineer at Disney,
yes,
the guy who owns Wacky
yes.
World.
And all that you see today, which we are still proud of, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful, is all the Ybor themed stuff that's in all the children's areas. And so
Yeah.
they replaced all my foam signs.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Took it
babe.
down.
It was
Did
good
you
for a
keep it
while.
as like
Ready
a
for it to
keepsake,
go.
or did you just trash it?
No, it's been trashed
Oh,
long
thank God.
ago. But I mean, God just, it was beautiful. It still is. People still walk into our building to this day and are like, wow, I didn't know this was here. I
Yeah.
didn't know that this kind of a facility was here.
And
Even
it
as
was
old
in
as the
those,
building is.
like, so fast forward that to 2017. And I have a
Ah.
conversation with Carl.
Well,
on the-
what we were talking about though in those
we
few
were about to launch another
staff
campus.
retreat, yes, we were like
2016.
Right. We're gonna launch.
2016.
We're gonna launch.
talking, but I would still get the tea from time to time.
Yes.
2016, 20,
Yes.
early 2017, we were ready to launch another campus because I think at that time we were running about 750.
Yeah, that
or
would be like our
so.
top. But
Yeah.
but we were talking about, hey, buddy, we were dreaming and talking about, man, we're gonna launch. And Carl, I remembered our staff retreat was like,
I don't want to do that.
"Ah,
Like, I don't think another campus. He was like, man, that's going to be a lot of work. And we were like, I know, but it'll be
But
it'll be
God,
awesome.
what God had done, and I'll tell Carl's story real quick. God had begun like the year before for Carl to start dreaming and thinking, this is not going to be forever. I feel like I'm going to go back and be a builder of finances and help people with their finances with my dad.
Yeah.
And God had started turning his heart and
Yeah.
moving his heart. And so it became very natural and it was an easy transition. And we all knew that it was God moving him out. But it was like, man, just pop the balloon under you because everything just deflated at that point. Because Carl had been with us from the beginning.
From the
too.
beginning. So that's Carl Ben was 12 years.
They were part of the
and literally,
DNA.
so when you think about like Jamie was with us from the very beginning, and then Carl. So now the band is
Yeah,
broken
Carl was
up.
the first staff person,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Carl was the very
Yeah.
first staff person. So we had kept the two main guys of the church plant.
Because every
which
penny
was-
mattered then.
Yeah. Was stayed together for 12 years.
I
Like,
mean,
that's
yeah,
unheard of
yeah.
in church
And
world.
you guys were yin and yang. And so
Oh,
it was
yeah.
a
Carl's great.
fine oiled machine. Right?
Yeah.
A well
and
oiled machine.
so I remember him saying, Paul, I feel like God's telling me I'm supposed to move to Nashville. And I was like,
He used the God card on you.
he did.
Well, it was the God card.
And
'cause
it was, and we know that now.
But it was hard.
That was a
That
tough
was-
season.
Oh, man.
And I
that was
really
tough.
think that after that, literally, that was when, after 12 years, the face of the staff changed. It was like now there wasn't anybody still around that was there from day one, except for Tim,
Mhm.
because Tim was
Yeah.
there.
But he wasn't
it
on
took him
staff.
forever
He
to
wasn't on
become
staff.
Yeah.
He wasn't on staff for so
Yeah.
long that so he didn't understand the staff dynamic. So that was the last. Carl was the last staff member that had been there since day one, and so now it was like I knew what happened, but everybody else now I was hiring from outside, not from inside.
I feel like that's when the church transitioned. When the early people start, the pioneers, the starters. That conference. I thought when you were making the conference reference, I thought it was the first one.
Oh,
where
no,
the,
I remember
the
that one.
planter says, "By the way, look to your left and your right. These are people you came with. They probably ain't going to last with you." And we're
Yeah.
all like,
Not us.
never
Yeah.
Once
us.
again, not us.
Yeah. And then
Skip 10 years down the road,
the
12
reality
years
is
down the
it
road.
took 10 years, not 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the reality is that then you were able to now start getting into professional Christian workers.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were into their careers. For me, and probably for a long time, Carl, there was no out. There was no other plan. This was it. We were gonna. I mean, it wasn't like we were gonna retire. It was not an idea of retirement, but it was like this is just the calling. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
it.
that's what we
And
do.
Now it feels like the church has evolved to such where it's a career for a lot of people,
Yeah.
and for a career you have to make career choices. And I think it's just the way people grow. And I used to make an evaluation of it. I used to be pretty judgy about it. But like, had I left Relevant and somebody was dumb enough to hire me at one of those other churches that never hired me, because I interviewed a lot, I had a great resume back then. But the reality is I would have been a career person to them. I wouldn't have been heart deep,
Right.
because we had already been doing life. And then, Paul doesn't just do a staff meeting, we have retreats. So you're all together. By the way, if you've ever gone with him in a car, he starts driving before putting it into the map. Okay. And everybody starts yelling. So that's how it works. But you do so many of those things together, it's not like being a regular employer situation.
So this season, to me, was a little bit of a paradigm shift in our worship, because then Carl was gone. And it's like we were listening to Elevation Worship, and that was kind of new back in 2015.
Yeah, that was.
And
we
everyone
were saying
was hearing it. And I'm
we
like, man, I'm
should-
experiencing the Lord in my personal worship time. I'm like, can we bring that in a little bit more inner court worship into church?
Yeah.
And so God brought us and dropped in our laps a guy named
Edgar. And Edgar was absolutely incredible. Like, I mean, Edgar was the right person at the right
Right time.
season for us. Like, so gifted, like great guitar player, great musician, heart for worship.
He really
Like,
taught
just
our people
how to worship.
a different
I've
worship.
said that to Edgar
Yeah.
so many times, and I believe that like we were on a new trajectory. Like
It was a different path.
it was a different path, but we were
Yeah.
still looking that we were like gonna.
Was that LC3 at that point, or was LC3 already in? So they
think we
ditched
had
the original
just-
vision I came up with. They went with LC because it was cheaper and easier to
It was
get
easier to
marketing on.
remember.
Yeah, easier
I
to
think
remember.
it was in that like when we bought the building. I think that's
Yeah,
when we
right?
kind of
Yeah,
did
okay.
that.
Yep.
And like then we hired other people on staff. Like people were like we were hiring
Pastor Tim rolled on. I'll never
Pastor
forget
Tim
the
Oh, he
rolled
time.
took
on.
my old job, just so
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But
I'd
I'll
hold it
never
against you, Tim.
forget, he was not on staff yet. They'd been with us from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because he was in corporate world,
Yeah.
HR. And Lisa his wife was walking out one Sunday, and I said, I just want to let you know, Lisa, this is coming. Just prepare yourself. I said, I really think Tim's going to be on staff as full-time ministry. And she's like, I don't know. She
Yeah.
kind of gave me
I
that.
always thought when Tim would come on staff, it would make everybody be grown-ups.
That hasn't
We just
happened
pulled
yet.
him down. We pulled Tim down.
I
Tore
still
him
can't get
down.
him to curse for nothing.
Yeah, I don't think he's never
He's
cursed.
still that constant.
Well, unless he's quoting
in
somebody
staff
else.
meeting. Yeah.
Well, you got to do the air quotes.
Yeah.
If you're going to do that, you got to
And
air
he's
quote
the
it.
buffer between Paul and I in staff meeting now.
Yeah, he's
Oh, 100%.
he
Yeah.
literally is afraid
'Cause
that
Paul
Susie and I are
can't
mad
fire
all the
me.
time at each other.
He
Paul
doesn't
can't-
understand.
Paul can't fire me.
Yeah, Carl and Kristen and Carl and Jamie
We're the wrong
have thought for
decade.
2 decades. They're like, good gosh, you guys fight all the time.
All
I'm
the
like,
time.
we're not fighting.
So hold on. In staff meeting, before Susie was on staff, early days, Paul would then get on the phone, and we're there. We're like, "Are you done yet?" And then they would be going at it. So now he just brought her in so they can do it in person.
That's right. We can do it in person.
Am I wrong?
So,
We're in the wrong decade. We need to.
so like even in that decade, then we had another so it went Carl, and then we had another staff transition where 2 staff members transitioned out, and it was the nature of hiring vocational staff members is there's transition. There's always transition.
When you birth a church,
Like and now
mission,
the
vision,
Haas
values
was
in
the
the DNA, right?
I said Carl was the last of the
I think you could
ones
say
that-
you lost Haas and Hannah and just leave it at that.
yeah.
Because at least Haas was integral from the beginning.
He really was. Yeah, he was.
You know.
That,
So
that's-
once Carl, then we had we hired a few people, and then it became like every other church where some transitions in staff people happen like every couple of years.
yeah, it definitely felt like in the years of between 10 and 15, it was like a season of transition. Like very much like what you said, Jamie. It was like we were hiring vocational staff people, but even in that season, we ended up having some of our regular staff people who decided, you know what, it's time for us to go.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Jarrett was one of the people that was with us.
he was
from the
one of our
beginning.
original volunteers.
Yeah.
I was his student pastor. And
Yeah.
he had a crush on Carly back in the day.
Oh,
That's
my
true.
In high
word.
school. He knew what he knew then.
So and love Jarrett and Tiffany, and he and Hannah, they moved on off of our staff, and so like we were like that whole season was a season of transition, but God kept bringing the right people along. We brought Josh came along during that time
was like-
too. That was the first time we hired a full-time youth pastor.
Right.
Was
on
with
staff.
Josh
But
on
that's
staff.
a great, incredible story.
And it was
of
incredible.
How God brought this guy. You had gotten his resume, but he was from
Texas.
and you're like, I'm not.
hiring a guy from Texas
Yeah,
because I can't afford
I
to
can't
move
afford to
somebody
move
across the
someone.
country.
Right.
And he showed up on our doorstep,
Yeah.
Well,
like, and
that's
knocked
cheap
on the
enough.
door.
Yeah.
And Tim
But
came.
before you say that, you had been at a car dealership working on one of your cars. And you were sitting there, and God told you, remember now?
Oh my gosh, Susie, thanks for reminding me of that. There was a guy. I'm sitting at the
Wesley Chapel.
Nissan dealership in Lakeland.
Okay.
And there was a guy that came in, and I don't know how we got on the subject of he was a youth guy and was doing youth ministry. Oh, and he was a diver, and he saw my dive sticker on the back of my truck.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, yeah, I'm looking for
A youth guy.
a youth guy. I was selling him some old dive equipment.
Yes.
And I said, I'm looking for a youth guy. He goes, yeah, I'm not really looking right now,
But he
but
came and met you there.
yeah.
Because he saw you on Facebook. He was going to buy the equipment, and you're like, God told me.
At that time,
bring you.
I'll bring you a guy. You don't have to go looking for him.
Yep.
And
so
I was,
like the next day,
Josh knocked on our front door.
randomly on the front
I mean,
door.
it was another one of those. God goes, see, I told you.
Yeah.
And Tim answered the door because Tim always.
We're not
answers the
serving
door.
coffee.
He didn't want to answer the door. So then he comes in. He goes, hey, Paul. He goes, hey, I know that today's your study day, but I think you should meet this guy. And I remember going down and meeting Josh, and like just hit it off. And I was like, this is the guy. I
Yeah.
knew he was the guy.
He came on and he just rolled in and was just a great
Super
additive.
creative.
Yes. and
Super
it was
creative.
an awesome
like,
time with our
he and
students.
Victoria
grew that.
were incredible.
Yeah.
Really grew our student ministry. And
Those were some sweet times with them.
yeah. And so that like took us through 15 years. So like we're back again. We're kind of like, whoa, man. And we were talking about launching another campus because Josh, I knew
So
that
it
Josh
came back.
Huh?
The idea came back.
It came back because
Okay.
I knew that Josh at some point in time was gonna be a pastor. Like, just knew it. He knew it. His wife knew it, and so we were once again back on that path. Like things were moving. We had the right staff again. We had the right people in place. And think about this: we lost a ton of staff and gained a ton of staff in a 5-year window.
Yeah.
Like that
But
was,
I think that's typical for the modern.
and it's typical for
church.
that cyclical
Yeah.
staffing in the
At
modern
least
church.
it is right now.
And
right?
so that got us through 2020. Like, and we were moving. 15-year anniversary.
Yep.
Were you guys at our 15-year
I was.
anniversary?
Remember you guys taped
So
a
behind the
little
scenes,
thing?
y'all.
That's
you gotta
right. We
know.
did a behind the scenes taping.
We did.
With you, Carl, and
5 years ago, we did
Yeah.
this. Yes.
Yes,
At-
5
And
years
that was
ago.
the big
at
gusto.
somebody's house.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
at the Ybor.
It was in Ybor. That's
Yep.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so 15 years, I'm like thinking, okay, it's finally, I'm talking to my boys, Carl and Jamie, and we're talking, and I'm like, it's the next 5 years. We're heading to 20. Wait till we get to 20 years.
Yeah.
Wait till we get there.
And then
And here we go. So
Well-
we have our 20-year anniversary, which this coming weekend is the same date, January 26th of
2015.
2020
Oh, 2020.
2020.
Yeah, because then
was our anniversary,
you
15-year
went
anniversary.
to the DR, came
And
back
I left
through
that Sunday. I left right after church that day to fly to the Dominican
for a little
for a
mini
missions trip.
Mhm.
Because I believe that where the first 10 years was local missions, the next 5 years was global.
Yes.
That's when the Dominican Republic,
Started being a
was the
big
thing.
Yeah.
and that
We
was
were
our first
counting,
missions
making
trip. We started making beds.
Yeah, just really seeing life change and people going on trips and coming
Yeah.
back, God using that in their
And
lives.
I would say this, Jamie, in our first 10 years, like global missions was not what we thought
It's
about.
not a thing.
It
Yeah,
wasn't
that
even a thing.
Yeah.
Wasn't on
Because
our
we were
radar.
saying,
It's got to be
We're
local
local.
first.
We're
we
local,
are the
we're
mission
local.
because we are a church plant,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
So that was
and
kinda
to be
crazy.
fair, I think probably at the same time we were maybe year 7 in on home rehabs, the mentoring at schools came
kicked
in.
off. Yeah, it did.
And that became really a hallmark
Yeah.
of what Relevant really.
we just said
Yeah.
local
But
missions.
Always local,
missions,
but then you
local.
became purposeful, and we stopped doing
Yeah.
all the haphazard stuff.
But God
just
took him
focusing on one.
through the series of like a year of going up to this church called Granger. And,
Yeah,
and-
Jamie and Carly were part of some
yeah,
of that.
But you were on, okay, now we need to do global. We need to be
I need to be.
immersive here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, I remember hearing somebody make a statement. I don't even know who it was. I don't think it was me.
It was somebody, but they said the light that shines the brightest at home shines the farthest away. But the light can't shine the farthest away because what I had always experienced with global missions was that everybody went and nobody did anything at home. And so we just said, we're going to do everything at home really well. We're going to do it locally really well. And if we can't do it locally really well, I'm not doing it globally. So then I said, what can we do globally that matches what we do locally? And my buddy John Zeller, who ran SCORE International, was the president of SCORE International in the Dominican, said, Paul, would you just come on a trip and see what we do here?
And that hooked you.
And I said, okay.
Dominican
The
people.
old bait 'em.
Yeah.
Got him.
And-
Got him.
But here's what they did. There was a lot of stuff like, if you ever go on like a
Plan, kind of.
a planned mission trip, they feed you with a shotgun. They spray everything they do.
Yeah.
And I was not having a good, like I was like, And then they took us to this school called Emmanuel House.
And because Ashland's special needs, I
Yeah,
think it really tugged
it
on
was
your
a special
heart.
needs school
Yeah.
in a third world country. And I met Merkea, Mother Teresa of the Dominican Republic. Jamie's been there with me a couple of times. Mother Teresa of those areas in that village, Quisqueya. And I started thinking, like, I remember seeing blind kids and kids who were deaf and kids who had learning disabilities and physical disabilities. And I said, where would my daughter go if she was here? And I was like, this is life-changing. And I said, okay, I knew it was that because that fit with, we work in schools locally.
Yeah.
So school fits. And then I remember asking her, what do you need the most? And she said, we need beds. We've got tons of kids who don't have
And
beds.
families in
And
the
families who
community.
don't have beds. They sleep on the ground.
Mhm.
And I was like, that fits our construction. We can do this. And I remember taking Amanda Ard on a trip. One of our young ladies who, man, she was a firecracker. And she still is a firecracker. Amanda, so if you're watching, you're a firecracker. And I know that God downloaded in her brain the plans
Yeah,
for these bunk beds on one night. And I remember her calling me the next day going, I got the plans. I know how we're going to build them. And we were like, what are you talking about? She goes, I'm going to buy the wood today. I'm going to go build one. I'm going to see how long it takes. And it literally took her like 2 hours, the first one,
Wow.
to build the first bed. And she said, we can do this. So, I mean, like, while there was a lot of transition going on, like staff-wise, like there was a lot of really cool new ministry going on in that season. Like, and expanding kind of what we were doing locally, globally was an incredible time. And so then we started thinking, we got another campus. We're going to launch another campus. We're going to launch another campus. And then we got to year 15. And so
Celebrated. And
we
then
celebrated.
We had,
It was great. Well, no, that's not. We're going to talk to you guys about the last 5 years because
not.
you guys are going to get to hear from 2015 to 2020. They came back. They came back like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm back. And they were back.